Of course, our topic is somewhat sensitive topic. However, it is a very important topic. So therefore, we will step by step, we will go through some of the slides you will see, but I will little explain more than that. So our aim is to look at one of the painful edges of human experience, those moments when our mind feels that suicide is the only refuge. Okay. So however, I am not speaking as a clinician making a diagnosis, or I am also not speaking here as a moral judge handing down verdicts on suicide. So I am inviting all of you to join me as fellow inquirers. Okay. So we will be using the psychological framework of the Buddha's teaching, okay? Not to replace modern medicine or professional health care, which remain essential, but to eliminate a deeper question that often gets lost when we are in crisis. Okay. That question is, when a mind drowning in pain, okay, or suffering chooses self-annihilation, okay, as its solution. So we are asking, does that solution actually work? Okay. So that painful mind chooses self-annihilation when it is in severe pain. But we need to ask the question, does that solution actually work? So does it achieve that freedom from suffering that it longs for? So over these 2 days, so I hope you can also come tomorrow. Okay. We will explore this together. Okay. So today in lecture 1, our focus is on diagnosis, that is to understand the trap. Okay. So I think you saw the title of the lecture. So tomorrow, we will turn to the path out of that trap. Okay. So therefore, both days, this lecture moves on. So in order to get a full understanding, participation in both days are important. Okay. Oh, this one. I want to move to the second one here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as you see, the topic is escape trap: understanding the suicidal mind through Buddhist psychology. Okay. So that's our focus. Before we go further, I want to make our shared intention very clear. As you can see on the slide, so we are here to explore curiosity and compassion. We want to learn what is this suicide, okay? What drives it, okay? So our aim is also to understand, okay? not to judge, to say it is a sin or some other thing, yeah, or illness even. To honor the depth of human suffering. Okay. Because this is really people suffering. Okay. So people are suffering in this, yeah. To a very deeper extent. Okay. And to draw on ancient wisdom to meet very modern struggles. So everything we discuss today is offered as a psychological and philosophical exploration within the Buddhist tradition. So my area is mainly early Buddhism, so my focus is also early Buddhist teachings. So it is not, as I earlier said, not a substitute or replacement for professional mental health care or crisis support. So we said we need both. Yeah, so if at any point what we discuss, these materials, feels personally intense, so please take care of yourself, okay? And pause, breathe, and even step out, okay? Caring for the mind is itself the part of the Buddhist practice, okay? So caring for the mind, okay? Yeah. To begin, I would like to acknowledge a powerful way of thinking that shapes how many people understand their suffering today. So that is the most, we can say that is this modern existential perspective. You may have heard something about existential philosophy, okay? So this existential the perspective. On the screen, you will see some of its characteristic voices. Okay. I am alone in a silent universe, somewhat meaningless universe. My existence is absurd. I am burdened with a terrifying freedom. Okay. Yeah, this is that characteristic voice. So from this view, self is very real. Okay. So in this view, it understands there is a self. Okay. So this self is very real. Okay. But it is also deeply problematic. Okay. So in other words, existential philosophers say that self is real, but it is a burden. It is problematic. So the task of life becomes, how do I means this isolated self, create meaning in a meaningless world. So then how do this self, because they accept self, create meaning in a meaningless, absurd type of world? So mood is often one of anxiety, okay? Burden, sometimes even heroic defiance. So then you also see on the screen Buddhist map. Instead of starting with I am, okay, Buddha asks, what is this I that suffers? Okay, so earlier question, I am alone in the universe, and so, but you see here that difference. Okay. What is this I that suffers? Is this self a solid reality? Or is it a construction? A pattern of experience we mistakenly solidify as a self, or I am. So while existential thought says this self is real but problematic or burden, Buddha suggests, of course, the sense of self is powerful. Okay. Sense of self is powerful, but it is a misperception. So this gives us two very different guiding questions. So existential philosophy question is, how do I bear this self? How do I bear this self? But Buddhist question is, what is this I that suffers? Okay. So you can see clearly, most of the people who are mostly following this existential life of thinking, philosophical line of thinking, they are dealing with the question, how do I bear this self? But Buddhism changed the question. What is this I that suffers? Okay. Our work today basically will lean into this question, Buddha's question. So second question. Yeah, so this leads us to the core question you can see on the slide. So we are used to hearing that suicide is either moral failure or a sin or a clinical symptom of mental illness. Of course, these perspectives are important. But from a Buddhist psychological view, we can also ask, what if suicide is a strategy? A strategy chosen by a suffering mind to solve the problem of unbearable pain. If it is a strategy, then we must ask, does this strategy actually work? Does it really bring the freedom it promises? So this will be a thread we follow throughout today's. To answer this question, we return to the Buddha's own starting point. on the screen you see his famous statement. Buddha says, formerly and now I teach only suffering and the cessation of suffering. Formerly and now I teach only suffering, dukkha, and the cessation of dukkha. Okay. So the key term here is dukkha. Okay. So dukkha includes obvious forms of suffering. Like physical pain, grief, loss, distress, but also the most unsatisfactoriness of all conditioned things, all conditioned existence. They are instability, they are insecurity, even their inability to give us lasting and unshakable comfort. So this prevailing subtle unsatisfactoriness of all conditioned things. So Buddha, for example, take us to understand whatever in our experiential world that we experience. So they are conditioned. Okay. And if we go a little further, they are dependently arising. Okay. If something is arising with conditions, that means that phenomenon depends on those conditions. So therefore, Buddhism look at them, all these conditioned existence is impermanent and there is no stable phenomenon here. Okay. So therefore, this whole conditioned things are unstable and insecure, incapable of giving us lasting comfort. So our ground today is not an abstract theory of sin or even abstract theory of illness. Our ground is dukkha, okay, or suffering, as it is actually lived. Okay. And the possibility that this suffering can come to an end. Are you okay? So, do you have any questions? You can raise your hand or ask anytime, okay? No problem. Yeah.
Can you give examples of the conditioned things that is still
Understand, okay. Yeah. Whether mental, material phenomena, this computer, it is a conditioned thing. And you yourself is a conditioned things. Conditioned. Okay. And our pain is conditioned. Okay. Suffering is conditioned. Okay. Condition means, according to Buddhist understanding, things arise in this world. Okay. So when we experience things, what are the things we experience? sights, sounds, smell, taste, touches, or mental images. So those which come to our perception or the senses. Okay. So those things that we experience, whatever the things that you take, whether mental or physical, all these things are conditioned. Okay. Like, for example, your being here itself is conditioned. Okay. And if there is a certain comfort or pain or whatever, or feeling, that is conditioned. They are together with conditions. Condition means causes and condition in Buddhism uses, okay? Causes and conditions. So for example, if you go later, we'll go a little deeper. What I call I am, okay, is a condition. And what are the conditions there? Buddha identify a group of physical things, okay, feelings, group of feelings, group of perceptions, group of mental formations or volitions and thoughts and wishes and all these things, and then consciousness. So these things basically condition an I, okay, or a life here. Okay. So whatever the thing that we take in this world, whether people, beings, or in the things in the environment, all these things depend on conditions. And they arise and cease. Okay. So they arise means they arise and stays and cease. Okay. So anyway, I go a little later, okay, with this. Do you, okay? Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so we have been now talking about this dukkha. Okay. So Buddha uses this Four Noble Truths, and that Four Noble Truths we can use as our framework. So as earlier said, all conditioned things are dukkha, okay, and various other day-to-day experiences that we have as anxiety, worry, and all these things are dukkha. Okay. So you can see there are the four items here. We call Four Noble Truths. So there is suffering. There is dukkha. Okay. It is not denied. Okay. There is suffering. Whatever the level or form that we experience, suffering, there is suffering. Okay. However, it has a cause or it has causes. Okay. We call samudaya. But Buddhism at the same time say its cessation is possible. Okay. There is suffering. So then we go to the conditions. Okay. It is conditioned. Okay. That suffering is conditioned. So there are causes that we can identify. Then at the same time Buddhism say this suffering cessation is possible, ending is possible. Of course you can, if you identify what causes suffering, ending the causes. And in those causes. So, however, there is a cessation. This ending these causes is not that easy. So there is always a path leading to ending the suffering. Okay, so then Buddhism is not really putting it into as a person and suffering, make it solidify type, as a self type, but Buddhism identify in our experiential world, you and me, we find that there is suffering. Okay. There is suffering being conditioned, but its ending is possible. But however, there is a path leading to the cessation of suffering. So today, we cannot focus on all this. Okay? So therefore, we focus especially on the second noble truth. Okay? So our aim is we understand there is this committing suicide level of pain. We earlier said we can consider it as a strategy that our painful mind try to find as a solution. Okay? So then we ask, what drives this suffering? What drives this pain? Okay. So that is where it has a cause. Okay. So the second noble truth, the cause of suffering. Yeah, so if we can understand clearly what is causing the kind of suffering that make suicide seem logical for people, that is why they go for it. So we can also understand why suicide, from a Buddhist analysis, cannot be the true cure. Okay. Yeah, before we go deep into the theory, though I'd like us to feel this in our own experience, in a few minutes, we will do a short paired exercise to test the difference between speaking from the burdened self and inquiring into that self. But first, we need to understand the main engine that drives our suffering. As you see on the screen, the second noble truth in that four earlier we referred to names the cause of suffering as tanha. Tanha. So often translated as craving or thirst. Okay. But this is not just ordinary wanting. Okay. So all of us have some simple desires. Like maybe you may be thinking, I'd like to have some cup of tea, or, okay, or I'd like to take a break. Okay. That is not the problem. Okay. Tanha is more intense. Okay. It is that compulsive driving force that says, I must have this to be okay. Or I must get rid of that to be okay. So you can see it is not simple wanting. It is a condition for my okayness. Okay. To be okay, I must have this. Otherwise, I am not okay. To be okay, I must get rid of this. If I cannot get rid of, I am not okay. So whenever the mind believes only if this happens, then I can be all right. Or unless this disappears, I can't survive. This means tanha is at work. So Buddhist texts speak of three main forms of tanha, okay, as you see on the screen. First one is kama tanha, craving for sensual pleasure. So this is basically the chasing of pleasant experiences like food, entertainment, scrolling, or buying things. Anything to distract discomfort. Anything to numb us from discomfort. Because we are seeking comfort. Okay. So pleasant experiences through food, entertainment, buying new things, or having things. Because we want to distract this discomfort. Or even numb from discomfort. Like some people even take drugs and all these things. Yeah. It is the something sweeter, something louder, something more tendency. So actually what tanha means, I want more. Okay. Okay. To make my life okay, I want more. Okay. You have already some of the things, but I want more. Okay. So that is basically that. But that is not the only tanha that Buddhism discusses. Okay. So that could be understandable. Okay. We want more, like we can feel that all the time. We go for many new things and buy things and change things and looking for good food, okay, tasty food, entertainment, watching movie, films and all these things. Okay. But the second tanha is bhava tanha. That is craving self-continuity. Okay. So this is the drive to be someone. We want to be someone. Okay. So I must be successful. I must be respected. I must protect my reputation, my identity, or my story. This is in many ways that existential project made explicit. The ongoing work of building or constructing and depending an authentic self. We not only want to enjoy, but we also want to enjoy more and want to continue more as this person, this being. Okay. I want to build a name, want to be successful, so that line of craving, okay, also present in our life. But there is a third craving that is more relevant for our topic today. Craving for non-being or self-discontinuity, non-existence. This is the wish. I don't want to be this me anymore. Okay. I want to disappear. I wish this life, this identity would just stop. Okay. in its most extreme form, this is the suicidal urge. Okay. I don't want to be this me anymore. Okay. That is the suicidal urge. So already we can see the same machinery that drives us to build a self, bhava, tanha, bhava, can also drive us to want to erase that self. So we are driven to build a self, and also we are driven to erase the self, erase that self that we constructed. Both are powered by craving. Buddhism recognizes them as bhavatanha, craving for being, and craving for unbeing or non-being or non-existence. So this brings us to a crucial contrast, as you see on the screen. From an existential standpoint, bhava, the project of being, is seen as the solution. I must create and affirm my authentic self. Okay, want to continue. I want to construct and create and affirm this authentic self. That is the solution. I want to exist. Okay, like most of the religions and philosophies, they teach us, okay, you have a self, you can continue, you can maintain it, okay, and you can send it to, release it and send it to some sort of eternal places, even in a, but in our day-to-day life, we are always creating a self, enhancing a self, constructing a self, promoting a self, okay, and want to be successful, as we earlier saw. Okay. Then vibhava, the wish for non-being, appears as a final failure. So this means I couldn't bear this self. I want to destroy self, destroy it. I couldn't bear with this self. So then, when it comes to Buddhism, both bhava and vibhava are two sides of the same trap. Okay, same trap. So now we are talking about, you can see that drives for suffering, conditions for suffering. Okay. How to find a solution to suffering. Okay. So one view says that we must maintain this self, we must bear this self, even though it is a burden, we must continue. Okay. But others said, I don't want to. I want to destroy it. Yeah. But Buddhism point is that both bhava and vibhava are two sides of the same trap. they are like someone running first in one direction and then in the opposite directions. Never noticing they are tied to the same post. Okay. So you go this way, you go that way. You go with bhava, continue, wanting to continue, okay? Existence, being, or to be, or not to be, okay? So the other directions. So this is the switching that we are always doing. So sometimes we go with religion, or sometimes we go with some sort of materialistic technologies. Okay. So we switch. Okay. Running this side, running the other side, but we are still working with the self. Okay. Because we construct the self, and then we accept the self, we affirm ourselves, and that self's continuity or discontinuity. Okay. So Buddhism sees this as two sides of the same trap. They are not noticing that they are tied to this same post. So that post in Buddhist language is called avijja. Avijja is ignorance. Okay? Ignorance. Ignorance of how things really are. Especially ignorance about the nature of the self. Okay. So we are ignorant, and hence we believe in a self. We live as a self. We construct and we try to deal with the self. But we want to continue more when life is okay, when life has a lot of like a pleasure, lot of sensual pleasure in life, we want to continue. But we don't have pleasure enough, or when unbearable, painful moments come, we want to end it. But what we want to maintain, what we want to continue or discontinue? Self. Okay. This self, as Buddhism understand, it is a misperception, misunderstanding, not understanding how things really works, how things really are. So whether we are desperately trying to be someone or desperately trying to stop being someone, we are still revolving around the same mistaken center. What is that center? I am this solid self. I am this self. I am this solid self. So in the rest of today's lecture and discussion, we will look more closely how that post is constructed, how that solid self-view is constructed, and why attacking the body through suicide cannot uproot it, cannot uproot that post, cannot uproot that self-view, cannot uproot that center, I am the solid self. Then tomorrow we will explore what it means in practice for that post, that self-view, to finally lose its power, Because now what we are doing is basically enhancing it, confirming it, enriching it, that self-view. Okay. Whether we go with one direction or the other directions, we are tied to that post, that self-view. One side we say we want to continue and maintain this self. Other side, when we go in the other direction, we say we want to discontinue this self. But we are tied to the post, the center, okay. This self-view. We believe in a self-view. Okay. Okay. I think before moving into the other sections, we will do some sort of a small activity. I hope you have some sort of a class activity sheet. Yeah. Yep. Yes, we'll distribute, I think, some paper, okay, if you haven't got it. I will explain what to do. Yeah, so first activity 1 we do now. Okay, activity 1 on the first page. Yeah, so on your worksheet and also on the slides, you will see the activity 1 given the title Voice of the Burden versus the Voice of Inquiry. Okay. So let's bring all this, now what we have so far discussed, into a lived experience. Okay. So I'd like to invite you now to turn to a partner. Okay, so you identify with whom I'm going to work with. Okay. Of course, if you happen to be sitting alone, don't worry. Okay. If you have a partner, that's good. But if you don't want to have or don't have, then leave it. Okay. You can still simply reflect inwardly. Okay. As if you were speaking to a trusted friend. See, you can play both roles. Okay? There are 2 roles here. In each pair, so we will have person A and person B. Okay. If you are alone, you can play first person A and then play person B. Okay, so there is no problem. Okay. Person A, for about 1 to 2 minutes, I invite you to give voice, okay, give voice to what I'll call the burden self. Okay, so burden self, so that we earlier understood. Okay. There is a self, but it is problematic. Okay, burden self. And then complete this sentence. When I am in deep pain, the feeling is like I am, okay, so it might be I am trapped, or I am a failure, I am completely alone, so whatever. So use whatever feels true enough from your own experience. Okay. You can tell a story, doesn't matter, and in order to make context. Okay. While also staying within what feels safe to share, okay, because you need to maybe work with a partner. So person B, your task is at first listen deeply. Okay, you don't speak. Okay, person B doesn't speak. Listen deeply without interrupting, okay, without fixing. When person has finished, then reflect back what you heard, okay, what the other person said, especially the sense of a solid I. For example, what I hear is a feeling of I am worthless. So you hear the other person is saying I am worthless or I am suck type. So then very gently, inquiring question to see, as you see on this even slide, what is this I that feels trapped? Okay. So now the other person saying I am trapped. So now your B person is now questioning, what is this I that feels trapped? Is it a solid thing or feeling that comes and goes? There is no need to answer this question, okay? So you don't answer, the B will not answer. The power is in letting the question hang in the mind, okay? You need to have this question, because we need to have this question. What is this I that feels trapped, for example? That question is not coming to us. So therefore, we need to always have that question. So that's exercise what we are going to do, right? Yeah, so after that, you can switch roles, okay? So we will go 2 rounds, okay? Switch roles. Okay, now you can begin. If you understood, if you have a still question, so how to do, please ask me. Yeah, of course, there are so many questions yet, because still we are just starting point, okay? So what you have just practiced is this turning point of our whole talk, okay, today, whole discussion. Just a starting point, okay? So this is a shift from identifying with the problem self, okay, with the problem self, like you read, like I am this pain, I am trapped. So I am this pain. To investigating the experience of self, what is this I? Okay, what is this I? So that shift is the doorway we will keep walking through together. Okay. So now you see a shift, okay, from identifying with the problem self, that means I am this pain. So now you are investigating, questioning the experience of self. What is this self? What is this I? Okay. So that's all you did. Okay. So nothing much. Okay. So don't. It will not give you the whole the solution to whatever that we are now talking about, right? So still more to go. So on the screen, you see what the Buddha offered as a kind of map of experience. Very popular, 5 aggregates called khandhas. So what are they? Form or body, this body and this physical world. Okay. And then feeling, the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral tone of experience. Perception, recognition and labeling, like this is anger, this is failure. And then formations, intentions, habits, emotions, thought patterns, all these go under here. And then consciousness, the bare knowing of all this. So now Buddha is inviting us to see that what we usually call me or I is actually this ever-changing bundle of body, feelings, perceptions, and mental habits and awareness. Okay. So earlier now you came to the question, what is this I? Okay. So then Buddhism says, what we call I is this ever-changing bundle of body, like what we call the form, rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, and vijnana. All these are impermanent, ever-changing processes or bundles. So this is, as the title says, the constructant side of self. Okay. The constructant side of self is, according to Buddhism, these 5 aggregates, what we are experiencing in our experiential world. Form, feeling, perception, formations, consciousness. They are all bundles, groups of things that we are experiencing. And in this construction side, self is constructed. Okay, in this construction side, where are these materials? Okay, so what are the materials? Form, a group of forms, group of feelings, group of perceptions, group of formations, group of consciousness. Okay. Using them, we are constructing a self. Okay. Self is normally something solid, permanent, eternal, lasting, blissful. So this kind of self we are constructing. So this slide shows what happens at that construction site. Okay, so now you identify a construction site, 5 aggregates, 5 group of things. Now what is taking place at this construction site? In ignorance, we cling to the aggregates and we say, this body is mine. This pain is me. This pain is me. This story is my story or myself. With regard to pain, perceptions, those mental habits and those formations and consciousness, we do the same in ignorance. We cling to. Okay, so in this construction site, these materials are there. We cling into them, identifying this is my body, or this body is mine. This pain is me. This story is my self. In doing so, we take what is actually fluid and impersonal, okay? Impersonal, fluid and impersonal, and we create a solid personal owner. Okay. Okay. So now all these materials that we earlier identified as body, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, all these things are fluid and impersonal. Rising, ceasing with conditions. But however, we create a solid personal owner here. And that is why this body is mine. Okay. This pain is me. This story is myself. Okay. Yeah, that is what I am calling this I manufacturing plant. Nothing in the aggregates, taken separately or taken together, is a self, as Buddhism point out. Okay. These aggregates like body, feeling, perception, mental formation, consciousness, whether you take them separately, whether you take them together, Buddhism say there is no self here. There is no solid personal owner. Okay. But through clinging and identification, we manufacture a sense of a fixed I who owns and suffers everything. So this is important because when we later talk about ending suffering, we are not talking about killing an entity called self. So Buddhism is not talking about killing, like ending suffering is basically killing a self, killing an entity. Okay. Because you need to understand this, our experiential structure, what constitute is basically these material elements, material things. They are a group of material things and feelings, perceptions, and mental formations and consciousness. All these are impersonal, impermanent, conditioned things. But using this material, we manufacture an I. Okay. Really a sense of I. Okay. Sense of I we manufacture, who owns and suffers. Okay, so now we move into these two extreme views. Okay. We now said we cling into these five aggregates. Right? When we cling, when this clinging hardens, it tends to crystallize into two extreme views. As you see here, eternalism. So there is a permanent, unchanging self. So that is what we call eternalism. So there is a permanent, unchanging self. So this feels bhavatanha. Bhavatanha, now you can recall that we earlier discussed. Craving to go on being this self. So that is called bhavatanha, right? Craving to go on being this self, to build and to protect it forever. So this is what you call. So we not only accept that there is a permanent, unchanging self, but we also crave to go on being this self, to build, to protect it forever. Then we have another view, another extreme, right? So they are called extreme views, okay? Extreme views. It's called Uchcheda Ditti, annihilationism. This self can be completely destroyed once and for all. Okay, this is another extreme view. So this feeds vibhavatanha that we earlier discussed. Craving to wipe out this unbearable self, because this view basically comes and we hold into when there are unbearable pains, okay, in life. So we want to wipe out this unbearable self. So from the Buddhist or Buddha's perspective, both are obsessions with the same mirage. One says, I must save and preserve this self. So I must save and preserve this self. The other says, I must destroy this self. You can see in both this self. I want to preserve this self. And the other one says, I must destroy this self. So in both cases, the assumption of a solid self is never questioned. Okay, so we never question that. We assume a self, and then we want to either to make it continue or to discontinue. But we never want to question this assumption of a solid self. Okay. So therefore, our task today is to question that assumption. Okay. So we need to question that assumption. So in your activity also, what you did was basically to try to learn to question that assumption. Okay. We always go with this extreme or that extreme, nihilistic type of views or annihilationistic type of views. And both, whatever the way, this direction or that direction, doesn't matter, we are tied to a post that we earlier said. A self-view, okay? And we never want to question that self, okay? But we need to learn to question that self, okay? That is where transformation takes place, okay? So we need to start questioning that self. And without questioning it, we think to preserve the self, or to destroy the self. Destroy in extreme way with committing suicide, right? But destroy the self, or even to preserve the self. Go with eternalism, or go with annihilationism. Never questioning. So then Buddhism teaches us to question this self. What is this self that suffers? what is this self that what I want to keep it going? Now you earlier saw a manufacturing site where 5 aggregates are there. They are conditioned things, impersonal things, fluid things, processes type. But there, using this, we construct a self, construct an I. Okay. So we are producing this I again all the time. Okay. Trying to maintain it or destroy it. Okay. So I think before going into the next activity, we take a break. Okay.